I welcome all the executives, the top management of Reserve Bank for joining us in this press conference. Sir, to just give a brief, we have about 38 participants, and they are representing the various media houses, whether they're print, digital, or electronic. So I will make some announcements and then I'll hand over to people to listen. So we'll try to accommodate as many questions as possible. I will request cooperation from all the media colleagues. I would call out names individually so that everybody can be accommodated in the limited time we have. We have half an hour time available with us. So I would try to request you to make most of this opportunity. And we'll start here once again. Welcome to this virtual press conference. And I would, with your permission, sir, start the first question.
Yes, please go ahead.
So I'll request Mr. Govardhan Rangan of Economic Times to, ask his question, please.
Thank you, Yogesh. Good afternoon, Governor. Yeah, thank you very much for reviewing this conversation. Hope you are doing well now after that brief scare of COVID. Sir, I just want to ask you, am I audible, sir? Hello, am I audible? Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, the thing is, you kept the interest rate, the accommodative stance, everything as it is, despite forecasting a higher inflation for the second half of this fiscal and even the first half of next fiscal. And with our market rates actually, dealing from even the policy rates, there's a fear that there could be an inflationary spike in the next year if supply side does not respond. Did the MPC debate about that, and when would it become a kind of an indication that the MPC has to change this? Like, so what will be the criteria? Thank you.
You see, I had first of all, good afternoon to all the participants, and it is really good to see you all and interacting with you after a long gap. And we will let's hope that we are able to hold a physical press conference soon. But coming to your question, specific question, you see, I have spelled it out quite in detail in my statement. The first point is that there is a window available for, for sort of checking the inflation momentum. I have said that the winter months with vegetable arrivals, with the arrival of bumper Rabi crop, bumper Kharif crop, and with, the sort of containment, the removal of the various containment and supply disruptions that getting eased out, and interventions from the authorities to sort of, that is the government in particular, to take action on various fronts. We have seen some action in the recent weeks. I mean, for example, the import duty on edible oil, which is one of the, components where there is inflation, where inflation was visible. The import duty has been reduced, but you are aware of all the measures that have been taken. We are continuously watchful, and as I have stated, we will continue to be very watchful and take a call as we move ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I will request Anup Roy from Business Standard to ask the next question.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Good afternoon, Governor. My question is that even 1 year rates are lower than the overnight repo rate. Does it pose a challenge to your monetary policy conduct, or is it deliberate that we keep that way? What is the exit path like? And you haven't done anything on that liquidity front as such. You have not removed the liquidity, but have assured more liquidity and adequate liquidity. So how things will pan out in the future, sir? Thank you.
You see, I have assured that liquidity will be available, but I want to make today's interaction with RBI, of the media interaction with the RBI, I want to make it as participative as possible. So I would request our Deputy Governor, Dr. Michael Patra, to respond to this question.
Thank you, Governor. Anup, as Governor mentioned, the level of liquidity is really a function of the stance of monetary policy, and the MPC has adopted a accommodative stance in the monetary policy and has given time-bound guidance. So you would expect liquidity to be comfortable for the market. Okay, so the rates that you see are below the reverse repo rate because collateralized rates typically tend to be below uncollateralized rates. Okay. Another factor that you should bear in mind is that what is happening in the money markets is a result of the distribution of liquidity. There's an asymmetrical distribution of liquidity in which those that have access to LAF are quoting rates at or within the LAF corridor. But non-banks like mutual funds and others who have no access to LAF are quoting rates below. Our hope and endeavor is that banks will intermediate these flows in the marketplace and there will be more evening out of rates. We do not want to intervene in market processes. And that is, but what we are doing is we are developing the markets. The whole slew of measures that Governor announced on the market development basis is intended to bring in more participants and enable the more symmetrical distribution of liquidity.
Thank you, sir. I would request Gopika from the Mint to ask a question.
You need to unmute. Gopika, you are mute.
Yes, can you hear me now? Yes. Sir, you spoke about the two bank bailouts that happened. We've seen that the RBI stance on bondholders, where bondholders had to take a hit when RBI asked the banks to write down these bonds. I'd like to know, is this marked shift in RBI stance from previous years where such bank bailouts have happened to now where RBI has been indifferent to the bondholders? That is one. Also, is RBI looking to ensure that mis-selling of these bonds by banks do not happen going forward?
You see, the RBI is not indifferent to any segment of the economy or financial markets. We take decision first in the best interest of the depositors. That is the paramount responsibility of the Reserve Bank of India to protect the interest of depositors. And all our actions are within the legal framework as per law and as per regulatory guidelines. Beyond that, since both the cases are currently sub judice, I would not like to elaborate further. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. May I request Mayur Shetty from Times of India to ask his question?
Thank you, Yogesh. Good afternoon, Governor. My question is on the asset quality of banks. Although the moratorium ended on August 30th, there is an effective standstill because of the Supreme Court order. So, is the COVID shock to the financial system still to be felt? And is the worst yet to come for banks? I mean, this question is in light of Moody's statement yesterday that Italy and India are most exposed to economic and financial consequences of the shock.
You see, we have made our internal assessments of the likely NPA scenario. The Supreme Court hearings are in the final stages. We will wait for the court orders, but we have made our internal estimates. And as you will be well aware, the financial stability report is due in the last week of December. And once we get the Supreme Court orders and once we conclude our, we sort of update our assessment of the likely NPA scenario, we will spell it out in the in the financial stability report, which will be released in the last week of December. In the last financial stability report, we had given a scenario, but compared to that, I think one positive development is that the economy has recovered much faster than expected or anticipated at that time. So therefore, please let us wait till the financial stability report comes out, where we will be spelling out the details. Thank you.
Thank you. May I request Swati Khelwal from Business to ask a question?
Thank you, Yogesh. Governor, my question to you is about the bank. हमने बात की LVB की timely intervention RBI का हुआ सर, but एक सवाल जो शेयर होल्डर्स के लिए के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू में जानना चाहती हूँ वो ये कि उन्होंने अपनी इंटायर कैपिटल खो दी इस प्रोसेस में. आपको लगता है बेटर मैकेनिज्म डिवाइस करना चाहिए जहाँ शेयर होल्डर्स के इंटरेस्ट को प्रोटेक्ट किया जाए?
आई थिंक ये सवाल का जवाब मैंने दे दिया है. जो हम डिसीजंस लेते हैं इस सब मामले में, इसमें कोई फिक्स्ड टेम्पलेट कोई फिक्स्ड टेम्पलेट तैयार करना मुश्किल है, क्योंकि सिचुएशन वेरीज फ्रॉम बैंक टू बैंक. एक बैंक का जो सिचुएशन है दूसरे बैंक में वो सिचुएशन अलग है. सो इट हैज टू बी केस स्पेसिफिक. और दूसरी बात ये है कि आप देखिए जो एक्शन हम ले रहे हैं, that is always taken in the best interest of the depositors. और जो legal provisions है और regulatory guidelines है, it is all taken in compliance with that. So beyond that, as I said, ये sub judice है, तो इसीलिए मैं ज़्यादा elaborate करना नहीं चाहूँगा at this point of time.
Thank you, sir. I'd request Lata Vishwanathan from CNBC to ask a question.
I think it is Lata Venkatesh. Lata Venkatesh.
I'm corrected, Lata Venkatesh.
Thank you, Governor. There is a lot of liquidity, and you also have stopped or scaled down OMOs and resorted to more Operation Twist. Are you worried that this surplus liquidity can make mischief in the form of probably inching up inflation or mispricing risk? Separately, the internal working group of RBI has made a distinction between bank licenses to corporates and licenses to NBFCs owned by corporates, which they seem to indicate can be automatically given bank licenses. Are they really different? Licenses to corporates and licenses to NBFCs owned by corporates?
You see, on the second question, let me say very clearly that it is a report by an internal working group of RBI. It should not be seen as RBI's point of view or decision. I think that has to be very clearly understood. The internal working group had 2 external members who are also members of the RBI Central Board. And the internal working group has acted independently. They have had their independent deliberations. They have given a certain point of view. RBI has not taken any decision on these issues so far. As I said, I think in my monetary policy statement, and also as I have said time and again earlier, our approach is consultative. The report of the internal working group is now in the public domain. We will receive comments. After getting comments from various stakeholders and others who wish to give their comments to us, we will examine the whole matter and take a considered decision. That is how it stands. Now, with regard to the other part of your question, I think let Deputy Governor Michael Patra reply to that question.
Hi, Lata. Your question was about the types of instruments we are using. If you recall, in October, Governor in his monetary policy statement gave clear financial market guidance that we will use a variety of instruments to ensure that markets are assured of liquidity and the smooth flow of finance. So we have been using a variety of instruments, modulating their volume and their character in tune with the market's needs. So that explains why we have offered a variety of instruments, and we will continue to do so into the near future. Yes, it is pertinent of you to remind us that excess liquidity can sow the seeds of inflation, but we are keeping a very careful and close watch on the liquidity situation. At the current time, our assessment is that the large part of inflation pressures are emanating out of supply side disruptions at the level of the retailer, very high margins being charged by retailers, and some amount of indirect taxes. Element of demand, which could cause what you call mischief, is still muted. But we keep continuously watching this, and we will take action as necessary if we find that happening.
Thank you, sir. I would request Mrs. Maitli from ET Now to ask a question.
You are mute. You are mute, Maithili. Please unmute yourself.
Maitli, please unmute.
Yeah. Am I audible now? Am I audible now? I can see Michael nodding his head. So thank you, Governor, and thank you also to the communications team of RBI for giving us this opportunity. It's always good to be able to ask the Governor questions directly. So thank you very much. So with that, let me start. At a time when an internal group within the Reserve Bank of India is looking at the monetary policy framework in the context of inflation targeting, would I be wrong in assuming from a reading of today's statement that the RBI has de facto junked inflation targeting, at least as we knew it earlier? For the simple reason that you have listed some paramount objectives of the Reserve Bank of India. You have listed 6 objectives, Governor: enhance liquidity, deepen financial markets, conserve capital, strengthen supervision, facilitate external trade, upgrade payment system. Nowhere is there a mention of getting inflation under control at a time when inflation is running well above our upper band of 6% and for close to 3 quarters. In fact, this is the time when RBI perhaps should be presenting a statement in Parliament about what it has done to inflation. So would I be wrong in assuming that somehow de facto inflation targeting, at least as we knew it, has been junked? Thank you.
Nothing has been junked. Let me be very clear and emphatic. Nothing has been junked. Inflation targeting is uppermost in our agenda. There is a reference to it in the preamble of the Reserve Bank of India Act. We give it highest priority. About the priorities which you mentioned, these priorities are priorities which are included in Part B of the MPC resolution. The Part B of the MPC resolution has now been uploaded in the website, and as is the practice on earlier occasions also, we have 2 parts to the MPC resolution. The first part is the Monetary Policy Committee deliberations and its decisions. So similarly, in the first part of the resolution, which has been uploaded today, and in the first part of my statement today, I have highlighted the issues relating to inflation, growth, concerns of MPC, how MPC looks at things, and how MPC is going to act. I have also touched upon MPC deliberations. It's only in the second part where I go for developmental and regulatory measures, which have nothing to do with the MPC's, deliberations. It's in the second part. What I have done, what we have done in RBI is that the various series of announcements which we have made, I think totally they run to about 20 or 21. We have just tried to capture what is the essence of those announcements. So let me again reiterate, inflation targeting is important. RBI is, as you know, is a, what you called a, I put it as saying that it's a multi-purpose central bank. It is not just an inflation targeting central bank. Inflation targeting is very important. It's a part of RBI preamble. It is definitely of paramount importance. At the same time, the RBI has role as a banking sector, non-banking sector regulator, as the regulator of payment systems, as the, so many other multifarious responsibilities, and you know it. I don't need to elaborate. So that is how I would like to explain.
Thank you, sir. May I request Ira Dugal from BloombergQuint to ask a question?
afternoon, sir. Sir, question actually on the core policy. Now, if you look at the inflation targets that have been given or the inflation forecasts that have been given for Q3, Q4, and H1 of FY21, they're all above at least the midpoint, which is 4% of the inflation target. Now, in that kind of a forecast scenario, it's unclear where you continue to see room, because you do continue to allude to the fact that there is room for policy easing, yet it's not clear where that will emerge if these inflation forecasts actually play out as per expectation. So are we just maintaining an accommodative stance more from a liquidity perspective rather than an interest rate perspective? Sub question to that is that there was an expected inflation cliff in, say, about November, that things will fall, inflation will fall very quickly. Has that now changed, given what you're seeing on the ground?
You see, I have said it in my statement that our expectations on inflation, which we had over the last 2 months, obviously that has not materialized. And we have to keep in mind that we are dealing with an extraordinary situation, a once in 100 years kind of event, and the kind of impact it has produced on the economy as well as on human lives, not just in India but across countries. It's huge. So we have to respond to this particular situation. And beyond that, I think it's Dr. Michael Patra, you would like to supplement something? I think you may elaborate further on our deliberations, because I need to take some rest also. And take some water, yeah. Okay, Dr. Michael, but on a serious note, let me say that you talked about the midpoint. So when I said that it is a once in 100-year incident, unprecedented in human, in the memory of the current generation. In that context, it was a reply to your question regarding the midpoint in the range of 2 to 6%. That is what I was trying to address. The other points, Dr. Michael Patra will elaborate.
Thank you, Governor. Hi, Ira. To your question about inflation, if you read the MPC's resolution, they have done a lot of analysis on inflation, and they see that over the next 2 months, they expect inflation to soften a bit. One, because of the Kharif arrivals, and two is that the usual winter easing of vegetable prices. And then Governor goes on to say in his statement that these two incidents offer a window of opportunity for supply side management. If supply side management is timely and effective, you will see the trajectory of inflation completely changing. But what we have given you is the baseline with things standing as they are today. But if you read into the guidance that Governor is giving, he sees this window as a chance for supply side management, which is the prime instrument to use at this juncture to produce a different trajectory of inflation.
Thank you, sirs. मैं अनुरोध करूंगा श्री प्रदीप पांड्या जी से फ्रॉम CNBC आवाज अपना प्रश्न पूछें।
शुक्रिया योगेश जी। गवर्नर साहब, मेरा सवाल एनबीएफसीज के बारे में है। आपने अपने स्टेटमेंट में बताया कि जो एनबीएफसी का फ्रेमवर्क है उसको रिव्यू करने की जरूरत है, और 2-3 मुद्दों पर आपने ध्यान दिलाया है। तो आप क्या सोच रहे हैं? क्या आपको लगता है कि एनबीएफसीज को और ज्यादा कैपिटल का इस्तेमाल करने की जरूरत है, या वो डिविडेंड ज्यादा दे रही है? क्योंकि ये सारे मुद्दे आप रिव्यू करना चाहते हैं, और कुछ इन्वेस्टर्स, कुछ निवेशक और फंड मैनेजर सब ये भी सोचने लगे हैं कि क्या आप दरअसल चाहते हैं कि धीरे धीरे करके सारे एनबीएफसीज खुद को बैंक में तब्दील कर लें? तो आपकी सोच दरअसल क्या है, और आप क्या रोड मैप देख रहे हैं इनके लिए?
इसी फर्स्ट पॉइंट जो मैं कहना चाहता हूं कि हम ये चाहते हैं आरबीआई में कि एनबीएफसी सेक्टर जो है वो बहुत ही रोबस्ट रहे और अपना जो काम कर रही है, और इन टर्म्स ऑफ रीचिंग आउट टू द लास्ट माइल, मतलब कैसे लास्ट माइल जो कनेक्टिविटी है, शायद कभी कभी बैंक्स वहां नहीं पहुंच पाते हैं, तो एनबीएफसी वो जो गैप है वो फिलअप करता है। इसीलिए हमने को लेंडिंग भी परमिट किया हुआ है, और उसमें भी काफी चेंजेस रिसेंटली हमने किया है। तो एनबीएफसी सेक्टर रोबस्ट रहे, स्ट्रॉन्ग रहे और अपना काम ठीक से करे, ये हमारा प्रायोरिटी है। और इसीलिए एनबीएफसी सेक्टर का जो गवर्नेंस मॉडल है, जो कैपिटल इश्यूज है और अदर एस्पेक्ट्स, उसको स्ट्रॉन्ग करनी चाहिए। और इसीलिए हमने कई स्टेप्स पिछले, अगर आप देखेंगे पिछले 1.5 साल से हम ले रहे हैं कि LCR, पहले हमने उनके लिए लिक्विडिटी रेशियो भी प्रिस्क्राइब किया, फिर उसके बाद चीफ रिस्क ऑफिसर के रिक्वायरमेंट प्रिस्क्राइब किया, और अभी हम उनके डिविडेंड पॉलिसी को देख रहे हैं। वी आर लुकिंग एट देयर डिविडेंड पॉलिसी, और उनका जो रेगुलेटरी स्ट्रक्चर है उसको भी हम रिव्यू करके एक स्केल बेस्ड रेगुलेशन करना चाहते हैं। देखिए, आज एनबीएफसी सेगमेंट में आपके एनबीएफसी है जिसका टोटल एसेट साइज इज टोटल एसेट साइज 20-25 करोड़ है, और दूसरी तरफ बहुत बड़े बड़े एनबीएफसी है जिनके की बुक साइज, एसेट साइज 50-60 हजार करोड़ या उससे भी ज्यादा है। तो उसमें हम कोई न्यूआंस्ड रेगुलेशन, स्केल बेस्ड रेगुलेशन क्या कर सकते हैं, तो इसके बारे में हम रिव्यू कर रहे हैं। और ये जो डिस्कशन पेपर है, हमने कहा है इसको, जो मैट्रिक्स है डिविडेंड डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन के लिए, और जो गवर्नेंस मॉडल, मतलब जो हमने कहा कि स्केल बेस्ड रेगुलेशन, उसको पब्लिक में अपलोड करेंगे, और इसके बाद वी विल गेट पब्लिक इनपुट्स। और यूनिलैटरल एक्शन, मैंने बार बार ये कह रहा हूं कि ये सब सेंसिटिव मामले में कोई यूनिलैटरल एक्शन हम नहीं लेते हैं, हम कंसल्ट करते हैं मार्केट को, इनपुट्स लेते हैं, और फिर एक बहुत कंसिडर्ड और रिस्पॉन्सिबल डिसीजन लेते हैं। इस मामले में भी वही रहेगा, और जो 2 डॉक्यूमेंट्स अपलोड हो जाएंगे उसको आने दीजिए, फिर उसके बाद वी विल टेक ए कॉल।
धन्यवाद गवर्नर। मैं अब रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा बिजॉय फ्रॉम कोजेंसीज टू आस्क हिज क्वेश्चन।
Hi, sir. Bijoy here. Just a couple of quick questions. One is on FX, because can you hear me? Sorry, can you hear me?
Vijay, can you speak a bit louder, please?
Can you hear me now? Yeah. Sorry. Just wanted to check on the FX strategy. Is the FX impact the sheer amount of flows coming in, and the fact that it's impacting also how you are handling liquidity, causing part of the problems that we are now seeing for you in the short-term rates and in the liquidity management strategy that you have been employing in India? But the bigger issue is appreciation a bigger concern for you than the domestic economy being, facing some short-term disruptions in the short-term rates? So you're on mute, sir.
Sorry. I mean, if I address all aspects of your question, that will be a giveaway of our internal strategy. But our strategy, as we have time and again articulated, is to sort of prevent the volatility, the undue volatility, and see that there is an orderly evolution of the exchange rate. And you are right. The liquidity injection policies that which Reserve Bank of India has adopted since March 27th, when we made started with the COVID response announcement, COVID responding announcements. Since March 27th, whatever liquidity RBI has injected into the market, that has achieved its purpose. That is our assessment. Whether it relates to the crisis in the mutual fund segment, which happened at one time but got controlled, or whether it is to targeted sectors through TLTRO. So all the liquidity infusion measures of RBI have achieved their objective. Now, because of global conditions, which I have spelled out in my statement today, there is a lot of inflow into the emerging economies, and particularly India. We are getting both FDI and FPI inflows. The gross FDI inflow has been about $39.9 billion, if I remember correctly. Similarly, FPI inflows also have been very successful, are also very high. We are sterilizing them at the moment through the, to the reverse repo mechanism. And we have various instruments, as I have articulated in my statement. We have various instruments at our command. And we are constantly monitoring the evolving situation, and we will deal with it at the appropriate time.
Okay, sir. If I could just clarify on one thing, in the guidance this time, you have said that it was unanimous. The guidance was, all members of the MPC were unanimous this time, unlike last time when there was one dissenting view.
All aspects of the monetary policy statement, of the monetary policy resolution, all aspects with regard to rate and with regard to the stance, they are unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'll request Shri Ramkumar to ask his question.
Sir, just wanted to know, see, given that in the last 8 months, 2 banks had to be rescued. Okay, so in this context, just wanted to know whether there is something lacking in the supervisory mechanism of RBI and you need to fix it seriously. Thank you.
You see, I have said it earlier in several other fora. Over the last 2 years, we have really strengthened and deepened our supervisory systems and our supervision mechanisms. The kind of deep dive and analysis which we are now doing, the kind of depth of our supervision which we have achieved over the last 2 years, it's something never before. And these 2 incidents of 2 banks which we had to intervene and resolve, it's not as if they happened one fine morning and we were not aware of what is happening. Our first focus is to work with the management of the bank and resolve the problem. Nudge them, goad them, request them. So our first effort is always to work with the management of the banks and resolve the problems. Only when we see a need for regulatory intervention, only when we see that regulatory intervention is required in the best interest of the depositors, we intervene. With regard to what improvements we have brought in supervision, I would request Deputy Governor M.K. Jain to very briefly just give some of the major highlights of our improvements and strengthening of supervision which we have done in the recent months.
Thank you, Governor. As Governor has told, in last 2 years, we have taken a lot of steps to strengthen the supervision, and it was unprecedented steps have been taken, such as unification of supervisory departments. We have taken strengthening the off-site monitoring and surveillance. We have strengthened large-scale uses of analytics and IT, upskilling the supervisors. All those steps have been taken. Even the interconnectedness of various entities. We have created a dedicated team who is really doing this off-site analysis and using the data analytics and the IT. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we are almost half an hour through, but I'll request 2 or 3 questions are still there. So with your permission, we'll take another 2 or 3 questions.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll request, first of all, Swati Bhatt from Reuters to ask a question.
Good afternoon, Governor. I just had one question. The Finance Minister on Thursday indicated that we are likely to have a very expansionary budget next year in a bid to support the recovery that we're seeing. Has that been taken into consideration in terms of the impact it would have on the inflation trajectory, or are you still waiting to see how that plays out? And secondly, also on the reverse repo being used to sterilize the FX interventions, is that likely to be the only tool that is used in the near future? If you can just clarify that. Thank you.
With regard to the only tool, reverse repo being only tool, just please refer back to my statement. I have said that RBI has various instruments at its command, and these instruments will be used at the appropriate time. And with regard to the first part of your question about what the Finance Minister has said, I was busy with the MPC meeting, so I have not not seen the full text of a statement. But as far as my recollection goes, what I have seen in the media and in the newspapers, she has said that it will be a growth supporting budget. It will be a growth oriented budget. I don't think, to the best of my knowledge, I don't think the Finance Minister has used the word expansionary budget. I think she has said that it will be a growth oriented budget. Naturally, when we are recovering from a massive damage which the pandemic has wrought on the Indian economy, the budget has to be growth oriented. And also let us keep in mind that during this year also, all the, all the fiscal measures which the government has announced, I think have been very well calibrated, very well targeted, and they have been very prudently drawn up. In fact, at the beginning of the pandemic, there was worry that the government fiscal deficit would just go haywire. Of course, the fiscal deficit has gone up and it had to go up. But I think the response of the government has been very calibrated, well calibrated, and prudent. So the budget next year also, I expect to be very prudent, but naturally it has to be, growth-oriented budget. I mean, that is something which is, if I can say, it's something which is bound to happen. It's a no-brainer. I mean, it has to be a growth-supporting budget.
Thank you, sir. I would request Anirban Nag from Bloomberg to ask his question.
Thank you, Yogesh, for giving the opportunity. Governor, I had two questions. One is, of course, there's been a lot of views about the overvaluation of the rupee. Do you think that that is going to have an impact on exports, especially since you said that the export recovery has been rather uneven this morning? And the other thing that I had in a question to you was on the inflation targeting regime being reviewed by the RBI, which we're expecting in the currency and finance report. My question to you was, is the RBI giving any thought to introducing the WPI as an inflation anchor along with the CPI?
Well, wait for the report to come, but at least we are not considering introduction of the WPI element. That's not under consideration of the RBI. And in any case, it has to be a part of the law. The current legislation, the current law says that it is CPI inflation. The policy rate is based on the CPI inflation. The inflation targeting is based on CPI inflation. And final call will be taken by the government and the parliament. But having said that, let me say that I don't see a situation of switching over from CPI, to the best of my understanding of the situation. And within RBI, there is no such thinking of switching over from CPI to WPI. But please wait for the detailed report to come. And the first part of your question was, sorry, if you can just remind me. What was that?
Yeah, it was on the overvaluation of the rupee.
On the overvaluation, on the overvaluation or undervaluation of the rupee, as you know, I mean, as a central bank, we will not be able to say whether it is overvalued or undervalued, and what level we want to. And we never have. I mean, this we have said so many times earlier. We don't have a target. I can see some of you smiling. We don't have a specific target about where the rupee, what should be the value of the rupee in the market. Our primary objective is to curb undue volatility.
Thank you, sir. I would request Khushbu Narayan to ask from India Express to ask a question. So it seems I think we have a connection issue. So I'll request Ashish Agashe to give the final question here. After this, I think we'll be winding up.
Thank you so much, sir. So you spoke about strengthening supervision and it being a priority in the morning. So this was about yesterday's revelation by HDFC Bank about the penalty which they have been made to pay because of service outages. Also, yesterday we also saw SBI also being sort of hindered. So, sir, usually we used to take the entire monetary penalty route to sort of discipline banks. So, is this a newer sort of a way of disciplining which you have adopted, and would it be sparingly used, or would it be? Should we see more of it going ahead, sir?
You see, the decisions, I mean, whether it's a monetary penalty by the monetary penalty or it's a supervisory action, I mean, that depends on case to case. And it will not be proper for me to discuss individual cases. But since both of these issues are so much in the media, let me say that in the case of the SDFC Bank, there were earlier episodes also. And SDFC Bank has an overwhelming presence in the digital payment segment, in the internet banking segment. So we want, we have some concerns and about certain deficiencies, etc. And therefore, we felt that it is required and it is necessary that, you know, the SDFC Bank strengthens its IT systems before expanding further. So therefore, this business restriction has been imposed on them. And I'm quite sure that the SDFC Bank will comply with our, you know, whatever we have suggested to them. I'm sure they will comply with it. And in that background, this decision was taken. And you see, we cannot put thousands or lakhs of customers who are using digital banking into any kind of difficulty for hours together. And especially when we are ourselves giving so much of emphasis on digital banking, the public confidence in digital banking has to be maintained. With regard to the, and I'm quite sure the SDFC Bank management will take necessary, I mean, we are quite optimistic that they will take necessary action in that direction. And that is the indication we have received. With regard to SBI, it has happened yesterday. Our teams are studying it. It's too early for me to comment on that. But at a more general level, I would like to say that there is a need for all banks and all financial entities to invest more in their IT systems and in technology. If you want to remain competitive in the coming years, technology is the key. IT robustness of your IT system is the key. So banks, NBFCs, and other financial entities need to invest more in their IT systems, need to invest more in technology and strengthen all their systems so that public confidence is maintained. And this is something I think going forward, the entire, robustness, the entire financial landscape is going to become more and more IT dependent. So there is need for more investment by all financial sector entities in these areas. So these are the remarks which we have made. We are constantly engaged. Let me also say that we are constantly engaged with the managements of various banks and NBFCs where we see deficiencies in their systems and procedures. We always try to work with them internally and nudge them and advise them to improve their systems. We will continue to do that. But certain times, in certain situations, certain actions become unavoidable and inevitable. And as the regulator and as the custodian of the digital payment segment in the country, I think the central bank also has to act. And that's precisely which we have done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Before we close, I think there's one last request for one question from Shritama Bose from Financial Express. Shritama, please go ahead.
Thank you, Yogesh, sir. Good afternoon, sir. You've said today that two crisis-ridden banks were resolved this year, keeping depositors' interest as the topmost priority. But the Punjab and Maharashtra Cooperative Bank, which has been under administration for more than a year now, and there's been a change in administrator also, we've not seen a resolution for that. Could you just tell us why it is so challenging to resolve that particular bank, and by when depositors in that bank can expect a full resolution? Thank you.
You see, the situation in the PMC Bank was completely different. As you would be aware that the PMC Bank has called for expression of interest for possible investors who would like to invest and take over the bank. And the last date for receipt of expression of interest and the information memorandum was 30th of November, and the response looks positive at this point of time. And the last date for submission of expression of interest is 15th of December. So let us see what is the response, and then After that, only we can take a view on this. And the bank and its management are fully engaged with, the investors who have purchased the information memorandum.
Thank you, sir. And with this, we come to the close of the press conference. I must thank the governor for taking the initiative to meet all of you, despite the challenging issues which we are facing logistically as well as in the life. So, I would thank each one of you for participating in this press conference, and special thanks to all the deputy governors for supporting in this press conference. Stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you.